So we're taking a look at the VARIO Cutterbar now, and what we can see and what adjustments we can make on our VARIO Cutterbar to aid us in the field. You can see I've opened the side panel now looking at the VARIO, and from here we can see some various adjustments we can make. The first one of those being is the main divider and adjustments for the rape knife setting. So one of our adjustments we make when we want to take our divider off, be that we want to remove it for road transport or if we want to put our rape knife on, is we need to turn the locking handle 90 degrees to release the mechanism. So we've now removed our side knife and we want to put our rape side knife on. All we have to do is slide the new mechanism in, locking the handle back into position. We would then lock our side knife on the top using the nut system. And we will then fit our two hydraulic pipes onto the hydraulic fittings, which will then tell our CBUS monitor that we have the rape knife installed on our cutter bar, and this will then allow the cutter bar to load in the rape settings. We additionally have another setting we can adjust on the side of the VARIO as well. If we take our 18mm spanner, we can undo this side nut here. We can also undo the side nut on the opposite side of the cutter bar as well. This is then going to allow us to move this bracket either up or down, and what this is going to achieve is the timing of the actual retractable fingers across the auger themselves are going to change. So for example, if I was cutting the likes of rape or beans or larger bushier crops, and I wanted my retractable fingers to protrude a lot earlier in their cycle rather than a lot later, I can then move this bracket on both sides, and that's going to offset the timing on the actual auger itself for the retractable fingers. Once I have then moved the bracket, I can then take my 18mm spanner and lock the bolt back into position, and then this is going to have adjusted the timing for the fingers themselves. So looking down to the side of the VARIO now, we also have the option to remove the side plate for the rear channel of the cutter bar itself. So if we're ever blowing down the machine, or if we ever want to leave it over the winter in case rain gets in the machine itself, we can leave the side panel off, and that's going to allow any chaff or water to run down and out of the cutter bar itself. Additionally at class, we also supply all of our cutter bars with a spare knife section, a full knife section across the entirety of the cutter bar itself. So if we ever were to get into any trouble and taking in any major damage to our knife, we can take off the old one by releasing the nut bolt system on the side, sliding that system out, and then taking the new spare knife and sliding that new system in. So we can also make some adjustments on the reel itself. We can adjust the aggressiveness of the reel fingers. So depending on our crop conditions and if the crop allows for it, for example, if we're trying to pick up some very low to the ground crop and we want our reel to be more aggressive and to be able to get underneath the crop and feed it onto the cutter bar, then we can move this black handle at the top into a different slotted hole, and that's actually going to adjust the position of the reel or the reel fingers as it comes up and around. So along the back wall of the cutter bar, we can see adjustable nuts. These adjustable nuts are adjusting our rear skids, which protrude against the back of the main table auger. This is what's keeping the auger nice and clean if we're taking in the likes of some wrapping crops or different crop conditions, so we can move these skids closer to the auger itself, or if we find some in bulkier conditions we want to improve crop flow, we can also move the skids themselves back away from the cutter bar auger. To adjust the skids, all we have to do is take a 13mm spanner and adjust all of the nuts in the one section. That will then give us the opportunity to move the skids either forward or back. So along the back wall of the cutter bar, you can see the storage facility for our lifters. Now if we're not using the lifters, we've got a nice little panel where we can store them all for the likes of the winter months or the times we're not using them. Comparing that to our previous generation of VARIO cutter bar, we had a bolt section which we had to bolt in the lifter itself. The new clip system is very quick and simple. All we have to do is slide the lifter onto the locator bearing underneath the knife and lift and fit the clip over the top. We have the option to fit a full set of lifters or a half set of lifters, depending on how you as the operator sees fit. Across the entirety of the VARIO cutter bar, we also have adjustable skids underneath that can be moved depending on ground conditions. So if I want a very shallow skid, so I want my cutter bar to be close to the ground, then I can move the skid into the shallow position as you can see here. Additionally, if I want to maybe pitch the cutter bar slightly, or due to my ground conditions I need to run a wider skid, then all I need to do is adjust the 2 bolt holes either side of the skid itself, and then select one of the different alignment holes. Be warned though, when using the skids in the wider position, there is possibility of getting chaff and the likes of straw in and behind the skids, so we need to make sure that we're keeping these areas clean when we're blowing down the machines. So underneath our VARIO cutter bar, we can see our auto contour bands. These are the bands that are then telling our machine how the cutter bar needs to react to the ground conditions. Now the bands come in sets of 2, and depending on the specification of the machine, we will either have 2 pairs or 3 pairs. We'll always have a pair on the outer edges of the cutter bar, and then we can also have a pair in the center of the cutter bar as well, especially those of the larger size. The way the auto contour bands are working is they move forward and backwards around the ground conditions. So again, if we're going through the likes of divots or holes in our fields, the bands will move. This will then tell our machine that the cutter bar itself needs to be adjusted, whether it be vertically or laterally. If we do find that our sensor bands are starting to fluctuate in the way that they're sensing the ground conditions, we need to get out and check that they're still in good condition. If we do see the sensor band start to react a little bit differently than to what we're expecting, we need to get out and make sure that they're not damaged or have been caught on some foreign object in the field. This can then lead to incorrect sensings for our machine.